Good morning. Welcome to Continuing Resolution this morning, our newly branded show. We'll talk to you every day about the continuing resolution until this national nightmare ends. Glad to have you here. Um, if you're watching on YouTube or two-way, don't put trash in the chat. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you for joining us. Welcome to our program based on the network news division's morning meetings in which they discuss the day ahead, the day book, and talk about what might happen. If you're watching here on two-way, oh my goodness, we're glad to see you. As we say in Romp Room, I see Ken, I see Michael, I see Ronnie, I see you all. We see you all. You're seen. Thank you for being here. If you'd like to get a question in for our two internationally known experts on things budgetary, please raise your electronic hand and we'll call on a bunch of you after we kick things around. Dan, where were you? You know how people always remember, like, where were you when some big thing happened? Where were you when you learned that Elon Musk planned to serve as de facto prime minister yesterday?
I was in our kitchen, starting to get stuff ready for dinner, and looked down at my phone and texted you guys, and was like, "Wow,
Good,
here we
good,
go."
good color. Sean, where were you?
I think I might have been at the kitchen working on some things, but yeah, same place. I mean, there's just some parity here.
That's right.
So I was at my third of three lunches that I had yesterday in Midtown Manhattan, and the person I was having lunch with, who's probably on this call, said, "So, like Speaker Johnson done?" And I was like, "What the what?" Because I really had no idea because I'd really been on my phone much, and I caught up quickly, and it's an incredible story. What happened yesterday? There's so many threads to discuss, and I look, it's just a great story. There's a lot of human elements here. The Trump Musk relationship, the Musk Johnson relationship, the Trump Johnson relationship. There's lots going on, and the whole organism of the House conference, which is meeting this morning. All that's so interesting, and there are real stakes here, whatever. But if you like unpredictable stories, we got one because literally nobody knows. I talked to so many smart Republicans early this morning, not talked, texting and emails. Nobody knows how this is going to end. People have some guesses, but it's a cliffhanger, folks, and we're here to ride over the ridge with you. Sean, what were you going to say? Or are you just thinking?
No, I'm getting as I get older, I try to write my thoughts so I don't forget
Yeah,
them when I get called on by
yeah,
the
okay,
professor. But I was
I
just
will
yeah,
thinking, I
say,
mean, we're focused on the CR as we should be, but just keep in mind that if this goes south for Mike Johnson, he has to be elected on the 5th for the House to do business to certify the election for Trump to come in. If you don't have a speaker and you have a Kevin McCarthy 2.0, this has, when we talk about consequences, it's not just government spending. If the speaker doesn't get to, he's already had one Republican say he's voting against him. If he
yeah,
doesn't get to 270, or excuse me, to 218 on the floor, or to whatever the majority would be, minus a bunch of members,
yeah,
you don't have a speaker to certify the presidential race.
yeah. Oh, just to be clear, I think what happens with the CR is the third biggest story here. The biggest is the Trump agenda in 2025. Because if they couldn't do this, it raises questions. And then who the speaker is going to be is big. And then whatever the CR, we'll talk about it all. Dan, what were you going to say? And then I'll run through
I
the
was
day
just
book.
going to say, based on some messages we are getting on X, there is a question of if we will follow the Washington tradition of canceling our vacations next week and potentially be coming back on it Monday and
You
Tuesday.
you mean because if there's a government shutdown, we have
If
to
like
work?
this story keeps rolling, I
Yeah, yeah. I'll do some tweets from
we're
my
being
vacation.
asked. We're being
That'll
asked
yeah,
online.
yeah.
Um, I,
If
I,
you
I
guys
will.
want to pay to reimburse me for my vacation, sure. Sean, what were you going to say?
They have Wi-Fi all over the world these days.
Yeah.
They
Um,
do.
I agree with you. I mean, the consequences of this are so far-reaching.
Yeah,
And by the way, you've got a 72-hour rule that the speaker, again, you got enough members that are going
yeah,
to jam him on that. He has to put
yeah,
72 hours between the bill and the floor.
yeah. Although
Um,
I wonder if it was a truly clean CR for a week. I wonder if they'd have to do this clean. I wonder if they couldn't waive the 72 hours because I
well,
mean
they can
you
waive
don't
it
need
whenever
if
they
it's
want,
I was
but
gonna
well no
say
they can't.
it's a
But I'm saying as a matter of politics even it'd be hard to object and say I need 72 hours to read a paragraph. You know what I mean? Anyway, today one of the totally interesting subplots is because this program and others made Donald Trump the de facto president. The real president has not really had to. His press secretary said something, but like in a normal shutdown situation, there's a lot of focus on the president of the United States and what is he or she someday going to do about this. Joe Biden returns from Delaware today, and I'm sure the White House press corps will, be curious of what his posture is. Although the expectation is his posture will be the same as his press secretary's was, and as Schumer and Jeffries is, which is they had a deal, and the Republicans need to keep the deal. All right, hold on. There's some good breaking news, which I'll get to in a moment. Then the vice president, okay, she is in Washington D.C. today. This is interesting. She'll receive briefings, and conduct internal meetings with staff. They're closed press, but today there's a surprise twist because at 9:15 p.m. when Dan and I are fast asleep and Sean is playing gin rummy online, the vice president is flying to Los Angeles, California. Her departure from Joe Biden Andrews is closed press. And she arrives in Los Angeles, California at 11:35 p.m. Eastern time, which by my calculation, and I'm not very good at math, is like 2 in the morning, 2:30 in the morning on her body clock. And this thing may be raging then. So we may see the vice president get off the plane and make some dramatic statement about
Wait,
the CR.
hold on, Mark. What time is the takeoff from JBA?
No, she's leaving
9:15
at 9:30 Eastern.
9:15
wait, hold
p.m.
on.
Eastern.
Yeah. Okay, wait a second. No, so you move backwards in time in LA.
Yeah, she lands at 11:30 Pacific.
But I'm saying when she learns at 11:30 Pacific, that's 2:30 a.m. Eastern time.
Oh,
And so she may be awake and commenting. And I doubt Joe Biden would be up then, and that's not a shot at him. It just probably wouldn't be up, but she'll be up unless they take her off the plane in a sleeping bag.
One interesting question is, how do the 2028ers handle this?
Yeah.
Like we talked in the past that like it's about
100%.
social media moments now.
100%. 100%. All right. Donald Trump, as far as I know, is in Florida, no public events. JD Vance, as far as I know, still in DC and still acting like the chief of congressional liaison for the transition, playing a huge role. Very interesting. Congress we don't know what's going to happen. There are meetings this morning. I believe the Democratic caucus is meeting at 9 a.m. Sean, do you know when the conference is meeting?
If I had to guess, it's 10:30. That's generally the
So it's unlikely anything's going to happen to those meetings until those meetings occur. It'll be interesting to see whether they confiscate the phones of people going into those meetings, particularly on the Republican side. Otherwise, Jake Sherman will be live tweeting the meeting over at Punch Bowl, so you can look for that. So there's lots of questions to discuss here. There's no other political news of any consequence to discuss, although we'll talk about a Wall Street Journal story that I put in the newsletter today, where the Journal makes a very valiant, well-reported effort to describe the ways in which the Biden administration sequestered him away from showing off the implications of his mental acuity decline. But the story barely scratches the surface, but we'll talk about that. But mostly we're going to talk about this. So moments ago, there was a tweet from Garrett Hake. Garrett Hake is one of the reporters who, from time to time, takes advantage of the fact that he has Donald Trump's cell phone number and just calls him up. And I'm going to be fascinated to see if the Secret Service takes his cell phone away, where Susie Wiles does when he becomes president. But as president-elect, he still has it.
That was funny.
He still has it. All right, so here Garrett Hake says, Trump doesn't want to just lift the debt ceiling. He's keen to get rid of it. Telling me in a phone interview, the Democrats have said they want to get rid of it. If they want to get rid of it, I would lead the charge. He sees it as a fake thing, no real value, controlling the debt. Does he have confidence in Speaker Johnson? According to Garrett Hake, maybe. Quote, we'll see. What they had yesterday was unacceptable. In many ways, it was unacceptable. It's a Democratic trap. Now, Politico is reporting something that matches what I was told, which was Team Trump was well aware of Speaker Johnson's gambit to pass a CR by loading it up with other stuff. The tipping point from a bill that's too big to fail to too big to succeed was reached at some point yesterday. And I got to say, if you're looking at Speaker Johnson's acumen, putting a pay raise in this bill was stupid. Just of all the things Elon is demagoguing, this one is stupid because, of course, if there's a MAGA effort to kill a bill, you put a pay raise in. Come on now. In addition,
that wasn't just stupid. that was political malpractice.
Yeah, that's what
Right.
I mean.
And just
That's what I mean.
again, I want just so that like all the purists out there understand this. The way it works in Congress is they get a cost of living adjustment, the same way that Social Security gets a cost of living adjustment. They have to vote in the affirmative every year to stop that cost of living adjustment, which, is reported as a pay raise. I'm just making sure everyone understands so no one says it's a COLA, not a pay raise, but that's what it is. But
Yeah.
again, it's political malpractice for a staff to say, "Hey, let's just slide this in."
Well,
Yeah,
can I?
I agree.
But I do want to add, they have not had one since 2007.
Of course, Dan.
No,
Of
no, no,
course.
no, 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 no. Just hold on. So there is bipartisan frustration that they have not done this. So I'm seeing stuff that this was Democrat. No, 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 no. Both parties badly want this pay raise and thought they could sneak it in. This was not a
yes,
Democratic.
They want the pay raise, and they also, some of them actually believe, and I think they're right, that if you don't have a pay raise, it's harder to attract people to run for Congress.
Yep.
Well,
But-
and you're right. We could go
hold
down
on.
a rabbit hole. You're maintaining
Yes, we
too hard.
could.
But they
Yes.
also exempted themselves from the Obamacare exchanges. I mean, there was a
Correct.
lot of like, let's take one for the team,
Yeah. So let's be clear. There's lots of topics for us to discuss. Okay. One is the speakership. One is what happens next year. But let's start with what's going to happen, because there are people on here. Part of the point of the morning meeting in a two-way is to try to have conversations you're not going to hear anywhere else. And part of what we're trying to do here is to give you insight into, from a practical matter, is there going to be a shutdown, and not just winners and losers from a political sense, but is government going to function? So here is Congressman Dan Muser of Pennsylvania, Republican, on Fox Business this morning, talking to Maria about his sense of what happened.
Congressman, wow, what a Wednesday yesterday. How would you assess
just another day in paradise, Maria?
Yeah, exactly. Tell us what happened.
Well, what happened was, in many ways, Doge did its job, right? I mean, as soon as we got the 1,400 plus pages, we thought we had a CR with some disaster relief. It turned out to be a lot more and a lot worse than that. Every page I turned, it got uglier by the page. Even this $100 billion, for crying out loud, for disaster relief. Okay, necessary, but I mean, is it all necessary? When I see numbers like 100 billion, why not 98.2? I mean, it should be based upon need, not based upon a number. And you know what? Doge swept in. Doge did its job. Joe alerted the American people. Hey, look what's going on here.
All right. So that is well said if you want to understand what happened, which is the bill became, rather than a must-pass bill, it became unacceptable to MAGA, driven first by Musk on Twitter and then by Trump and the vice president elect. But Johnson is not really pure MAGA. And now he's sort of screwed because MAGA is not going to come to his rescue. He's now the enemy of MAGA because of this bill. He had to get Democratic votes. He had to make a deal to get it. He thought he had the support of Mar-a-Lago to do that. Now he doesn't. So as I understand it, and I'll lay this out, and then Sean and then Dan, I want you to respond. Again, we're talking about what's likely to happen. Okay. There could be a clean CR, and it could be for a week, or it could be until next year. There could be a CR with a debt ceiling increase in it, and or disaster relief. But everything else goes. I don't see right now anything but those three options. Sean, do you think those are the three options, or is there something else? And what do you think the most likely outcome is?
You don't think that the Commander Stadium is going to make it to the deal?
I don't. And there's another provision in there that I really want to pass, which is exempt small businesses from having to file some document.
Yeah. Oh,
that I don't want to have to file.
I know. Actually, thanks for reminding. I'm going to make a note. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
But by the way, I just want to take one quick step back and remind people why we got here. You're absolutely right. The word was that Speaker Johnson's staff was communicating with Trump's staff. Where Johnson screwed up, I wrote an op-ed the other day before Caroline Leavitt got announced, advice to the new press secretary. And the number one thing is check with President Trump, double check with President Trump. Johnson, by all accounts, never talked to Trump about the CR. It never came up according to.
That's not what Politico says. That's what
I was just going to say that. Yep.
But at least in the Army Navy game, the whole time that this was, I think that he talks about his text chain with Vivek and Elon. He did a poor job of socializing this with his members internally. Dan Muser coming out and saying, "Hey, we were shocked by this. This is poor member relations, poor stakeholder involvement. This is on Speaker Johnson and his team. Where does this go? I think a short-term patch, a clean CR for 10 days or whatever gets them through the holidays, is probably where it goes. But the problem right now is that
But a short-term
Johnson,
patch that is clean, nothing about
right,
debt relief,
clean,
nothing
no
about the
debt
debt
relief,
ceiling.
right? But so here's where I'm going with this. The Democrats have always or both sides, just to be clear, have always exacted something out of a debt ceiling increase, right? So they don't owe him any favors right now. Their view is, hey, we played ball with you on this because you were going to have to put it on the suspension calendar, not go through regular order. So just because you got screwed isn't our problem. He's not going to get help from them. So the only solution is a short-term clean CR that gets him past the holidays, and then he hopes that there's something under the tree for him because
But
I don't.
short term into January or short term into before Christmas.
Oh, I think I think I would get you if I were him. I'd get himself to January 5th. Hopefully, maybe the 6th. Get him by the speaker vote. But
So
10
that,
days,
but is that
12
that's what
days,
you think
whatever
is
that.
smart? But is that what you think will happen? You think
Yeah,
clean CR
because
to January 5th?
I think enough members. It gives
Who
members.
provides the votes? Who provides the votes for that?
Well, I think you could sell this
Thank
on
you,
the
Mark.
conference. You could sell them on the conference. You could sell the conference on the fact that it gets us by, it doesn't change anything, and we can have like.
But what if Democrats refuse to vote for that?
Well, I think that's an easier sell. Republicans are 1 for like 99 when it comes to shutdowns. But I think that you can sell this. That bill, 1,547 pages. And you just go out and say, this is what Democrats wanted to pass, blah, blah, blah. I mean, they can do the
Sean, I'm pinning you down. You're saying that the most likely outcome for which there'd be sufficient votes is a clean CR through the beginning of January. That's what you say is going to happen.
I think that's the only path forward. I don't, and you may actually still get a shutdown.
And how many Democrats in the House vote for that?
I think the first time it goes down. I don't think it passes right away. I think
but then you can't bring the same thing back.
Yes, you can. Absolutely.
Okay, well you can, but it wouldn't work. Dan,
Yes,
what's going to happen?
I think once there's a shutdown, then you go, then it becomes the blame game, and then the question is who wins and who loses. And if Republicans can actually get their act together and say, we are not going to pass a 1,547-page bill.
Yeah.
Either you're with us or not.
But what about
Well, but I think,
Trump's,
hold on, for 15 years, that last sentence is the key. If Republicans get their act together, and the challenge for the Republican Party, as has been for over a decade, is the No Caucus and the no industrial complex that Elon Musk has jumped into now.
Oh, he's the leader of the band. He's
right. I mean, now we're seeing crazy Elon, right?
By the way, I mean, one of the things that Elon has to understand is government shuts down, no public inauguration. Government doesn't supports things, right? So you have to have a realization about what that means because Elon said no bill should pass until Trump is in. Okay, well, that's what reality
there's so many things to talk about here. I want to share a couple of tweets. Hold on. I want to share a couple of tweets, and then Dan, I want you to respond. But just on this point first, Elon doesn't know about politics. Grover Norquist told the AP that. But the followers don't care. They think, well, great, he's bringing a fresh perspective. Dan, what are the prospects that Democrats would raise the debt ceiling, as Trump is demanding be done? And again, as Garrett Hagen's reporting, he wants them to not just raise it, but get rid of it. Although I think probably most members would be for that, would be my guess. What are the prospects that Trump is asking for something so unrealistic? Because you're not going to raise the debt ceiling without huge concessions to Democrats, and then you're back to the same problem you had before. What are the prospects of that?
Yeah, I mean, so again, I want to go back to the No Caucus. Like for people on here who are like, well, why wouldn't the Republicans just do this? There are about a dozen or 24 Republicans that have never, ever voted for a debt ceiling increase.
Yeah.
Either party, when Trump was in power, they will not do it. And then they go on Fox News, they go on X, they say, I stood my ground. I'm a true patriot and believer, and everyone else is a rhino, right? And so the problem is you need Democratic votes. And then what happens is the Democrats get blamed in a campaign commercial for raising the debt ceiling and being spent, drunken sailors. So we've seen this game where we do what's right for the country, and then we get blamed for doing what's right for the country.
Right.
So what Democrats say is, if you want us to play ball, here is what we want from you. But I think even step back from that. So we've talked about the fact that for Pete Hegseth, Joni Ernst is an issue. One of the issues is the farm bill. So now you have people in the Doge community saying we shouldn't be doing this, although Trump did say we should pass this for our farmers. So there's we want a clean CR, but we don't want a clean CR. So you have a problem with Joni Ernst and a lot of farm communities that, by the way, if we're going to talk politics, are red states. You have the fact that Tom Tillis, who Mark has flagged as somebody we should really watch, has said, over my dead body, are we going to adjourn and not deal with the disaster relief money for Western North Carolina? We Democrats have 2 senators in Georgia that are probably on an endangered species list. Well, this is the great opportunity to say, I'm going to fight for Georgia, right? Where is our disaster relief? So the problem is, it's not so simple to just say, Uncle Elon is fighting the good fight for a clean. Nobody wants a clean CR. It's a good talking point, but nobody actually really truly wants this up there because everyone has equities that they think they don't want to go home and explain why they didn't happen.
Yeah. Well, or if you're from a state with disaster and you want disaster relief, you want it on a vehicle that's going to pass. All right, a couple tweets I want to show you because no matter what happens today, as Sean said, there's almost certainly going to be a shutdown. And most Republicans say once there's an actual shutdown, the news coverage is all about you can't go to the national park and, all this, and it's going to cost so much money because it always does. Most Republicans say it's a loser. It's just Charlie Brown in the football. There's one Republican who says, besides Elon, bring it on. 101, please. Newt tweeted this morning. Is Newt on right now? Anybody check? Is Newt on?
He has been the last few days.
Is Newt on? I'll read his tweet, but if he's here, let's bring him on. President Trump and Republicans should not be afraid of a government shutdown. The next election is 2 years away. We had 2 shutdowns in 1995 and became the first reelected House GOP majority since 1928. It may take shock therapy for Schumer and Democrats to learn President Trump is serious about draining the swamp. All right. So that's one perspective. It may be true, but there are a lot of House Republicans and Senate Republicans, the McConnell wing of the party, does not want a shutdown. Now,
hey, can I, Mark, one?
And also
hold on, guys. I just want to show you one more tweet and then open it back up. Okay, I'll show you another tweet. Okay, Liam Donovan. If you don't follow him on Twitter, you should. Extremely smart Republican strategist. He points out something super smart. Please, 201. Sometimes what happens when the House gets its act out of line, the Senate steps in and passes something, right? Normally at this point in the program, the Senate would step in and sort things out between the timing and the leadership dynamics. There's no clear path there either. In other words, there's no way Schumer is going to come up with something and try to jam the House in conjunction with Senate Republicans. That's not going to happen. It doesn't. All right, never mind. All right, so the Senate, he points out correctly, sometimes the Senate would be a solution. That's not an option here. Dan, go ahead. Pick up on whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think I a couple different points here. I mean, I've got so much energy today. This is great to be a Democrat. Look, I think one of the things for Trump and one of the problems that they have today and they're facing tomorrow when Trump is inaugurated is Trump likes to be the chairman of the board, not the CEO and management getting into the nitty gritty and having to kind of actually put the plan together. He likes the plan to be brought to him, right? He'll kind of take the temperature. Is it good? What are people saying? And he is very happy to say, nope, that sucks, publicly, go back and make it better, right? What you're hearing from Mike Johnson, and I think if it's not Mike Johnson, whoever the next speaker is, they cannot survive without Trump becoming more of a CEO or Susie Wiles or somebody that is going to get in there, own it. But the problem is then you have to go to your base and Uncle Elon and tell them this is a good deal. It's not pure. It's not going to be great. And so I think for Democrats, like, don't get in, what's the when your opponent's hanging themselves, don't get in the
Yeah.
way of it. Like for
Yeah.
us, we are unified today. We may not be tomorrow. Something could change. But right now, like, Joe Biden should just say, we negotiated a deal in good faith. Chuck Schumer will say the same thing. The Republicans have got to figure out what their position is and what they are for, not what they are against. And there is not agreement in any way, shape, or form in their party right now.
Son.
Two just observations. Number one, if this is another example, we've talked about this for the last couple of weeks. We do have a current president of the United States. We do have a current chief of staff to the White House.
Yes.
It's amazing that we have not uttered their names during this conversation.
No, I did. I raised it. He's coming back from Delaware, and I think he's going to be asked about it.
Okay. And by the way, Dan Pfeiffer yesterday talked about what we did, that Joe Biden's not really acting as president right now, which is a separate subject. But let's stay on the positive.
I mean, just as a reminder, I mean, my point is, yes, he will be asked about it, but he is not engaged. He is not like, I'm making phone calls. I'm in the mix of it. Okay, that's number one. Number two, I just want to be clear. This is not a partisan thing. This is a bipartisan critique. We are $36 trillion in debt. The right thing to do is to address spending. I'm sorry that these guys can't get home for their Christmas parties.
Yeah,
but
I call bullshit on that, because the only way to address spending is to save the entitlement programs by reforming them and holding. But Donald Trump, your president, I like to say that like Dick Armey, your president has taken that off the table. Okay.
I will also remember this when we talk tax reform.
Yeah.
I don't think.
You're not gonna deal with spending. You can demagogue on spending all you want, but there's no actual attempt to deal with spending unless you change the three big entitlement programs and maybe veterans health care. Try to hold current beneficiaries harmless. But I mean, it's silly to say we're going to deal seriously with spending. It's just ridiculous. It's a waste of time. It's unfair.
No, it's not. You just put a ton of words in my mouth that I didn't say. What I said is we have a spending problem. We're $36 trillion in debt, and both parties are to blame. I was the budget committee spokesman for 3 years. I'm well aware of the driver of the debt and the deficit.
I thought you were saying deal with it now. You said don't go home without dealing with it.
Right.
That's what you said.
My point,
but you think they're going to do entitlement reform?
No.
On the
But
back
my
of an
point is
envelope in the next 2 days?
That this idea of acting, these guys came in, Republican after Republican, when I came on my show after Johnson they said the number one thing, we got to get back to regular orders. The bills have to go through the process. Yeah. They did it once again. They kicked the can down the road. Do your job. I mean, the bottom line is they keep throwing their hands up going, how did we get here? Because none of them did their job. And it's just ridiculous. And I mean, here's my problem, Mark. I get where the driver of the deficit is, but not one of them did a single thing to even try. They didn't even pick up the change in their couch. These are folks, they want to whine about entitlement.
I agree with that.
Something.
Yeah. Hey,
but I think
Lori
the challenge is Trump doesn't believe in deficit. He likes to make people happy. He does not like to deliver bad news. And if you're going to do cuts, if you're going to deal with spending, there will have to be losers. And he doesn't like to deal with that, right? Yeah. It's like, here's a stimulus check. Here, we're going to do tariffs farmers. Here's $15 billion to bail you out.
He likes to pretend he does. Hey, Lori, see if Hogan Gidley will join us right now, if you don't mind. Because Hogan's working for Speaker Johnson and he knows Donald Trump. Should have thought of this earlier. Let's see if Hogan will come on. Because really so much is on Speaker Johnson here. So much is on him. And he might have to decide about whether he wants to have save his job or not.
Well, that's an interesting question. Yeah. Would he do that with the backroom deal with Trump? That I'm going to fall on the sword. I'm going to put this up. It's going to get through. You can huff and puff to like faux outrage. We'll move on, but you will take care of me in some way.
Yeah.
But
the problem is, that's a potential deal, but I don't know that gets the votes. All right. I want to get our folks in. So real quickly, if Johnson goes down, Sean, who will the speaker be?
If I answer this, I'm leaving and going to Cumberland Farms and buying Powerball tickets. I mean, I don't know.
Make a guess, dude. No, you don't know. All right, Dan.
I think Tom Emmer gets it.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
The correct answer is Byron Donalds. The correct answer is Byron Donalds. We were looking
I
for
would
he would
Byron
take it.
Donalds.
He
Here's
would
the
take
problem,
it.
Mark. I think Byron is set on becoming the next governor of
I'll tell
He
you.
Florida.
is.
And
He
I don't,
is.
why
But
would
it's a
you want,
process. It's a process of elimination. Although actually, Emmer might be the correct answer, to tell you the truth, despite Sean's tisking. Those are the two most likely. All right. Last question before we move on is about next year. Whether Johnson survives or not, what does this say about Trump's chances of passing a reconciliation bill, say in the spring? Sean, is this Johnson says we'll have control of all three. We'll have the House,
yeah,
Senate, and White House.
I
So it's a
actually,
different thing, but
yeah,
you
the
still need
dynamic
to
changes.
herd the cats. You
Yeah.
still need to herd the same cats.
But I think there's two dynamics to change. One is you do control the Senate at that point, and two, Trump is actually president, and Susie Wiles and others are actually in the seats to make a difference. So I feel very good. And plus, reconciliation with the with inside the constraints of a good parliamentarian ruling on what's in and what's out
Yeah.
in terms of deficit reduction. I actually feel very good about it, to be honest with you. And frankly,
Okay.
I think that's why they are going through this fight, because they want to
How'd
get
you
rid of
feel?
a lot of crap.
How'd you feel about the CR at 10 a.m. yesterday? Pretty good about
Oh,
that
I
too.
didn't. I mean, I'll be honest. The second that he said he was putting it on the suspension calendar, I went, "Let's get some popcorn ready." I mean,
Okay.
I think the only
Dan,
thing that's benefiting him is the calendar, meaning Hanukkah and Christmas aren't. That you got 2 big days
yeah,
that drive members to want to get out of town.
Hanukkah's 8 days technically, but I take your
Hogan
point.
cannot join, Mark. He is otherwise.
Boo, boo,
Let me guess.
boo. Does Hogan
Yeah.
have a spokesman? Does a spokesman have a spokesman? Thank you for trying, Lori. Dan,
Oh, I think what we're seeing now, we're going to see a heck of a lot more next year. Look, a reconciliation bill by nature is massive. I mean, it is going to be the must pass, or like the must politically pass bill. So whenever you have something like that, people try to load it up with their goodies, right? Not just, and forget Democrats, we'll be in the minority. You probably will need our votes on some level at one point. Republicans will try to load it up. Wait until Uncle Elon and everyone sees a 1,000-page reconciliation bill with all the things that aren't part of immigration or like energy. And when you go to tax reform, oh my goodness, everybody goes to
Yeah.
put their local parochial
Yeah.
things in. So I
that's a
go
million
back.
years away.
Well, so look, I go back to two things. Does Trump really want to be management, or does he want to be board chair? I think
Yep.
we mentioned this yesterday. Look, Elon Musk knows nothing about politics. This is a guy who bought Twitter at $44 billion, then tried to back out of it, then takes it. The thing is worth half the value. Like, he moves a million miles an hour. Half his ideas are brilliant. Half of them, even in the things he knows, are crazy. And you have a base that doesn't really want to do certain things. And so I think governing is hard. Governing is a mess. I was watching Fox News and Jesse Waters last night, who was complaining that Republicans have lost their momentum. The esteemed former speaker was on, and his reply was, "Welcome to governing." Like,
Yeah.
it is hard
All
and
right.
it is messy.
I'm going to say we're not going to talk about the Wall Street Journal story about Biden because we're not, because I want to get everybody in. Here's what I'd like everybody to do before I bring in Aaron, and then raise your hand here if you want to get in the conversation. Please go on X and tweet at Hogan. Remember, don't lead with his handle, because then not everybody will see it. Say, dear at Hogan Gidley, why are you afraid to go on the morning meeting? All right, something like that. Let's goad Hogan. We got 26 minutes. Then goad Hogan to come on.
Happy
All right.
holidays.
Happy holidays, Hogan. All right, let's see what happens here. Aaron Wells, welcome in. Very cinematic name, Aaron Wells. Is that your stage name or is that your birth name?
Well, actually, my first name is David, so I go by my middle name.
Okay.
It's very confusing for everybody.
All right.
So,
David Aaron Wells. That's even better. You could be a novelist or a serial killer.
Yeah.
Welcome in.
not
Thank
great.
you for joining. Thank you for joining. Well, tell us where you are. What's on your mind, sir?
So I'm in Kentucky, and fair to say that we're very far away geographically from a lot of this. But can I ask a question first off? Is it not true that this is happening because nobody can agree together on the 12 appropriations bills that are
Yes.
supposed to go through? Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's right. That's why you need a continuing resolution because you don't have a budget that's passed.
So I think a lot of, from the outside, a lot of the problems that people are seeing is that it looks like Congress isn't doing their job.
Yes,
And
sir.
then we get to this point and they want to throw in a bunch of things that seem very strange. Like a lot of the things that were being posted on X yesterday were actual screenshots from the bill, and it didn't make any sense why that would be in a continuing resolution bill. And it seemed like it's something that should have lots of debate and oversight and all of these things going on. And I know that that's not happening, but it's a little bit, you know, strange to hear even Republican congressmen on Twitter kind of chastising everybody for being upset about something when the original problem is they weren't able to do their job. And we would like, as the people, I think one of the main thing as a young father with 3 children, we want transparency from the government. And this is the same thing over and over and over again. And it seems like Elon and people like that also want that transparency. And we want to be involved in that process. It's not like it was when my parents were in the 90s where things just happened in DC and then we heard about it later.
Yep.
We know about pork spending, we know about this stuff, and we would like to be involved in that. So
Yeah.
anyway.
Aaron, you're speaking for tens of thousands of people. You're reflecting what I would say is the dominant view of Americans who aren't living and breathing this, but who wonder why their government can't do what they're hired on to do. Dan, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, look, as you say, this is a bipartisan issue. And basically, over the last 20 years, power has been taken from the committees to the speaker's office. It used to be that, as you say, the committees would work on a bill, on a budget. They would have hearings, they would debate it, pass it, and send it on up to the full conference. The problem is when you do that, you're airing laundry, you're admitting to programs that you're going to fund, and you're making hard decisions in front of the public about not funding. And politically, both parties said, and Nancy Pelosi was one of the biggest drivers of consolidating power into the speakership, is we can't run those risks. We'll put one bill, there's too many things to shoot at, and so we'll ram it through because there's something in it for everybody. And the public, to your point, won't really know. So I agree with you. The lack of transparency is maddening. I would add there are a lot of members of Congress who are so demoralized that their committees mean nothing. They're not able to do this work. It's just the people who hold the power on both sides of the aisle in both chambers don't want to let go of this.
And can I add as well, like in Kentucky, we kind of deal with this. I'm our local GOP chair, and the House leadership and Senate leadership control everything that gets on the floor. And so it's very demoralizing for local parties and local legislators. And that's how the rules are. I'm not trying to call them out and say you're all terrible or whatever, but there will be a large, public support for a bill or some form of a bill. And then the leadership from both sides gets together and, completely makes it useless. And it's almost like you shouldn't have passed that bill anyway. Again, the point that I'm making here is that all of those things that should be happening, like I think you're saying in a reconciliation form, take a long time, and you can debate them and figure it all out. And now it's just, here's 1,500 pages, have fun. I'm
Yeah.
in the middle of nowhere in Kentucky. I don't understand all the inner workings there, but
But you do.
Yeah, you do. You do understand it. Sean, go ahead.
I would just say I'd harken back to something that Dan said previously, which is that it's messy to govern. There are rules and there are nuances, and sometimes the members don't want to explain them because they don't think people will want to pay attention. Their attention span isn't big, or that people won't get the nuance. In deference to them, there are some of these things where you're following stupid rules that Congress is at, or the Congressional Budget Office scores, quote unquote, meaning how much does something cost, in a way that's ridiculous, but you have to abide by it. So there's two issues that I think are at stake. One is straight up transparency. Like you, to your point, you have a bill that's supposed to be a clean CR, and it has the Redskins Stadium in it, slash, members getting exempt from the Obamacare exchanges, which has nothing to do with any of this. I get why it does, but part of this comes down to buying off votes, which is when you have slim majorities in two houses run by two different parties. It's, hey, to get this guy's vote, I got to include this. And if I do this, then I got to throw in the kitchen sink. Dan brought up the farm stuff the other day, right? There's a lot of these. I mean, Lauren Boebert was on News Nation last night and said, I support a clean CR and our farmers need help, which, yeah, I get it. But I mean, that's her job. And that's part of this problem, is that purity and transparency just don't go hand in hand with the process.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Wells, thank you for joining. I appreciate it. Love to have you. I need to update everybody on some matters. Number one, apparently sicking a Twitter mob on Hogan, in the view of some, is not reflect peace, love, and understanding. So while 3 of you at least sent very nice messages to Hogan, just invitations, they were not scolding, as I had suggested. Let's lay off Hogan. He'll come on if he wants. So there's that. Number 2, Georgia Court of Appeals has said Fonnie Willis is disqualified from working on the Trump prosecution because of a conflict of interest.
Oh, back to the shutdown. Come on.
And back to the shutdown. According to the team at CNN, the Hill team at CNN, they have an excellent team covering the Hill. The emerging GOP plan is a clean CR, a clean debt limit increase. I don't know if that means eliminating the debt ceiling or just I did start the war on Hogan, or just increasing it. Disaster relief and farm aid, but everything else comes out, including my special interest provision that does not require small business owners like myself to file some document that I don't have time to file.
I'm sorry, what's the length?
Doesn't say here. A good question. Doesn't say, but I think probably through March would be my guess. So that actually could pass. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe that could pass. Whatever. All right. Maybe, I don't know.
The No Caucus is going to, in fact, I believe, I forget who they are, 3 Republican House members, when presented with something similar, said they will demand spending
but Dan, I think this stays on the suspension calendar. I don't think this goes through regular order.
Yeah, I think it's suspension. And the question is, could Democrats live with that? They don't really get much out of it. They're not getting any of their stuff.
I was just going to say,
they're not getting the money. They're not getting the money for the bridge. They're not getting the pay raise. So
by the way,
I don't know. I don't know if that could pass
Democrats,
the Senate.
If I were the Democrats, if we ultimately had to eat that, I would pick the fight that we should get rid of the debt ceiling vote. You will split Republicans
but Dan,
right back down the middle on that.
Can we role play this out for a second? So the bill, as Mark described, is presented. I want to vote for it. Are you voting for the bill?
I'm sorry. Say I lost my train of thought.
I'm just role playing this for a second. I'm voting yes. Are you going to vote yes or no on the bill as Mark?
You're in this meta drama. You're a Republican congressman and he's a Democratic congressman.
Yeah, I'm a senior statesman. I've been around for a while. Well liked, prolific fundraiser. Well, on the 50 most beautiful people list. Do
you go more on Fox and Friends or Hannity or Rob Finnerty?
I'm probably more. I do a lot of podcasts. I paved my own path.
Okay. Dan, and tell us about Congressman. Tell us about Congressman Turrentine. He represents New Haven.
That's right. There we go. I like that. I think, Sean, it will depend on how unified the Republicans are. Like that would be my political analysis. If you guys just have like 5 or 6 that aren't, there, then I think you would maybe get some Democrat. I would be watching, what's his name in Michigan, Fetterman, like in the Senate, some of these like endangered Democrats and others who might find it in their interest.
I guess what I'm trying to pull the string on is what would be the objection to voting for a clean CR that raises the debt ceiling? And what's the Democrat talking point as to why we don't want to vote for that?
I think you're asking us to bail you out. You don't have the votes.
But you think the American people...
But when we come to you, you guys do not in any way, shape, or form help us, and you're going to hammer us for raising it's Groundhog's Day.
So fair enough, but I guess what I'm trying to get at is what is the public talking point of Democrats as to why they object to that bill?
Oh, we'll figure that out. That does not,
Because
that does not.
I'll tell you their talking point. It's their current talking point. It reneges on the deal. There was a
Exactly.
deal. It was all agreed to. It reneges on the deal. All right.
But do you think
When
the
there
American
are
people care?
situations, well, no, but the media cares. The media
Yeah,
will buy that line because they always side with the
if
Democrats.
30
on Shutdown.
Republicans are against it and
yeah,
going on
exactly.
Fox News, then like we'll just sit there
Exactly.
and say it's your
So-
problem.
So, Mr. Westgate, thank you for your patience. Get you in 1 second. When
Sure,
you
no
have
problem.
a situation like this, some of you are familiar with this dynamic. The speaker's in the speaker's office, and you got a rotating cast of senior House Republicans coming in and out. Sometimes the vice president elect, maybe a senator, but it's mostly just House Republicans coming in and out saying, can you sign off on this? Are you for that? Whatever. Tom Cole, one of the smartest members of Congress, as far as I'm concerned, he used to be a pollster, which is a rarity. Tom Cole of Oklahoma, head of the Appropriations Committee, just came out of the Speaker's office and was asked what the way ahead is, the way out is, and he said, "quote straight ahead and keep walking." It's kind of like that famous Satchel Paige quote, but this is an evolving situation. That's all I'll say. Mr. Westgate, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are what's on your mind.
I am dialing in here from Massachusetts. And can I move off the CR conversation, or are we trying to stick to that?
What's on your mind?
Yeah, well, some of the over the last week, but especially with the ABC findings, I'm very happy that there's been some level of accountability to the media. We've all watched for years, and some of the the dishonest takes, whether Russian collusion, Hamilton 68, we don't have to rehash all that stuff. And I guess a question I have for Dan is, does the party, do they believe these things, or do they know it was just talking points? And
Which things are you talking about?
well, a lot of things with, the Steele dossier, some of the Russian collusion things like Hamilton 68, very fine people, bloodbath, all sort of those meta narratives that really got peddled out by the party as well as their friends in the media. And I'm trying to understand, does the party fully know that a lot of that stuff was not true? And then the other question would be, does the electorate understand that still? I know what people on the right side of the aisle kind of understand those things, but has there ever been a poll to look at Democratic voters and ask them if they still believe a lot of those things are true? Because I have conversations with friends and I'll tell them things that, hey, that's not true, or this didn't really happen. And they don't believe it. They still to this day don't believe it. So I'm curious if has any of that stuff had been polled? And I'm just wondering if there's going to be more accountability in the media and in the party to maybe tone down some of that rhetoric.
Dan.
Yeah, I think there's two parts to that. Some of what you said, and we could spend a whole show on this.
Yeah.
Trump did not, it was found, collude per se, right? The standard with Russia did not, not Comey, but Bob Mueller did not find it to be quite enough. There was a lot of contact, and there is no debate that the Russians did try to help Donald Trump. That is established fact. The question is, was it at the collusion with Trump? There is a lot of stuff that Trump did that, in my opinion, would warrant, move off of just the Russia stuff, that would warrant or warrants Democratic criticism. I think the problem is the party went overboard so that every single thing he said was taken as an outrage. So the bloodbath comment and, comparing them to Hitler. And so to your point, I think a lot of people in the public stopped listening to anything we said because everything was an outrageous, 5-alarm fire. The guy is just like a horrible person. And nobody stepped back to really ask themselves, why is he so popular? Why does he connect with people, et cetera? So I think a lot of Democrats since this election have stepped back and begun to say, we've gone too far. How do we now engage with him and how should we view him? I think there's a long way to go. Some are more further along than others. But I think kind of in fairness to Democrats, there were things that Trump has done that, kind of warranted, in our opinion, some of the criticism. But you're right. Party has been out of control.
Yeah, they went to 11 on everything. And especially during the campaign. And I'll share kind of an anecdote. My wife and I have 18-year-old daughter we adopted internationally. And the night after the election, the night of the election, she called my wife very nervous that she was going to be deported back to her country of birth. I mean, that is terrifying. And it just made me really upset that that narrative around, the immigration things in the media got really just escalated so far that it was breaking a lot of people's brains. And that's why I was just happy to see some level of accountability with the Stephanopoulos thing. And I hope the media can really take a close look at themselves and understand that when they're going up to 11 on these things, it has real consequences.
John, I have family members who believe, and I love them, and I know some of them watch daily, who I'll say fell for the same falsehoods that would say to me, how can you say anything nice about Donald Trump when he is going to, I'm not even going to repeat some of the things because I get uncomfortable saying that were so batshit crazy. And I love my family, and I've told you that on the phone directly. It was horrifying that people are consuming this and believing it and telling their friends about it. And you're just like, that's not true. So I hear you.
Yeah, and I'd like to see. Yeah, and I know it goes on
you.
both sides. Don't get me wrong, but I would love to see the Democratic Party kind of step up and call some of those excesses out, right? And hopefully now, as they're coming together and figuring out what they're going to be when they grow up, hopefully they take that stuff to heart. I'm not optimistic, to be honest with you, but let's hope we can get some civility back into the conversation.
John, thank you very much. Thank you very much, my Elvis. All
Johnny
right,
Cash.
Johnny Cash. Thank you very much. All right, Rick, come on in. Tell folks what's on your mind, please.
Up getting up this
Or
early.
Rich, sorry, Rich, not Rick. Rich, sorry, Rich. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning, Mark, Sean, and Dan. First, Mark, what car is on your T-shirt or your sweatshirt?
Don't have a clue. Leave it to others to say.
Looks like a Chevy with a bow tie on it.
Yeah.
That's a Chevy.
I came on here thinking that I think I'm with Speaker Gingrich that let's have a shutdown. Was that really his point to both of all three of you?
Yeah.
I'm curious. And what would be the consequences of the start of the Trump administration in January if that happens?
Yeah. Okay. Before you answer, a little bit of more comparable reporting from CNN, this time from Politico, the excellent folks there. Speaker Johnson and Trump's team are circling a stopgap plan that includes disaster aid, pushing off a debt limit fight for 2 years, and a 1-year farm bill extension. So that could pass, right? I'm not sure Democrats would be psyched about it, but that could pass. Maybe. All right, Dan, what's your answer to Rich's question?
About a shutdown. Look, the challenge with the shutdown is, in the abstract, it sounds like a political fight and like our principles, and it has real world impacts to people in their daily lives. And when members of Congress start getting constituents that call and say, I have a problem because of this, people get anxious. Like, the public starts to get frustrated, and add the fact that it's the holidays and it's New Year's and people are traveling, that the idea, nobody has ever really successfully shut the government down for weeks and come out of it, or proposed the shutdown and come out of it successfully. So I think never say never. Somebody may do it, and Newt referenced 60, 70 years ago, but it's very hard when people's lives are being impacted.
I think the dynamic has changed. One of the things that Speaker Gingrich in a previous tweet mentioned was, they actually grew the majority after he did it the first time. They had that extended. So the long-term benefits, I think, if done right, can be. But look, we talked a lot the other day about populism. I think the American people are tired of this, the lack of transparency, the lack of, or the pile on of excuses. Here's what I did. And when you see a bill that's supposed to be a short fix that deals with moving the Commander's Stadium and giving members of Congress a raise and exempting them from the Obamacare exchanges. It doesn't seem like they're doing their job. It doesn't seem like they've got your interest in their best in their sights. So I think that at some point it's not a bad tactic, but the problem for Republicans is we've never had our act together. We can't juxtapose, and that's why I was going through that sort of, corporate game with Dan here, because part of the goal was we don't have a consistent message that says, here's where we can get them. Here's where we can say, why aren't Democrats joining us, keeping the government open with these basic common sense solutions? And that's what we need to do if we're going to do this. And right now it's a hodgepodge. But the bottom line is, I will just say this. When Newt campaigned for Speaker in 1994, he went around with an ice bucket. And he basically would stop at every place. Dan probably remembers this. But like he would say, there is ice dropped at every member of Congress's office in the morning. Now, it saved like 200 grand. There was probably some legacy kid whose father knew the congressman from his district who got a job delivering ice. And this is in the 90s, delivering ice. So every member of Congress would take the ice, dump it out, put the bucket back out, and the next day they'd get more ice. And they have a refrigerator and a freezer in their office. But it was symbolic that we respect the amount of money that you're working for every day to send to Washington. And there is a lack of respect right now from both parties about the money that we send to Washington, D.C. and the amount of debt that they continue to pile up. And so if we could actually get our act together and say, we're ready to tackle this, I would be all for it. I don't see any political will on either side.
By the way, if people want to know, those ice buckets were for afternoon cocktails. That is why ice was dropped off at congressional offices only 30 years ago. You have your afternoon cocktail.
Rich, thank you.
Guys, just one last one. The perception is always that Republicans lose in these battles. And as Sean points out with Speaker Gingrich, they don't.
Yeah.
They haven't in the modern era. And
we
the
did
challenge
win
is
one against when Schumer said something stupid in the first Trump shutdown. But that was, again, it's just we tend not to do well, but it's because of a lack of political leadership.
Yeah. Rich, thank you. Appreciate you coming on and getting up early with us. I want to get to a bunch of stuff here before we go. So first of all, third quarter GDP estimate was upgraded, or was upgraded. The number was upgraded from the estimate. Once again, the U.S. economy, envy of the world, and Joe Biden would be happy for.
I was just going to say, where's Uncle Joe?
You didn't know that in the House Democratic Caucus meeting, which has been going on now for some part of this hour, according to who's this reporting? This is Punch Bowl. The message from House Democratic leadership this morning is that the party needs to stick together amid GOP infighting, per sources in the room. Leaders saying unity is important while reiterating that Republicans created this mess and it's their problem to solve. If Republicans can get their act together and agree on a package like what we just talked about, as Politico and CNN is reporting, Democrats might be put in a tough position. All right. Want to go back as we close to this Fonnie Willis thing. Go ahead and put up the tweet from Greg Bluestein. Bluestein, is that his name? Greg Bluestein. Yeah. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution. As we said, the Court of Appeals has just ruled that Fulton County District Attorney Fonnie Willis is disqualified from the election interference case against Trump and his co-defendants. Court says it will not take extreme sanctions of tossing out entire indictment. Now, and this apparently can be appealed, so this may not be the end of it. But if she's going to be off the case, some new prosecutor coming in would take years to start the whole thing over. So, Sean, MAGA is already celebrating on X. Is this, how big a deal is this, and why?
Well, it's a big deal. The more that these cases on, like the Georgia case, obviously is a state case. The federal ones have been dismissed by Jack Smith. There's some civil proceedings still happening. This is a big deal. The more that he can govern unencumbered by these cases, the better. And again, it just shows it's another win morally for MAGA, right? We didn't just win. The judge disqualified her and showed that we were right. So this is the fight and win mentality that it is really on a roll. The ABC victory, the court victory. I mean, so this just adds fuel to the MAGA fire.
Dan?
This was such a great show until the last 2 minutes. It just, look, it's so maddening that case is probably going to, sputter out, not because of the merits of the case, but because the prosecutor had an affair and couldn't keep her, because she had an affair. And that to me is maddening.
Yeah.
Well, wait, just
I
to be
think
clear, it
there's
wasn't
more to
just
it than
an
that. There's
affair.
more to it than that.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Well, and then she hired her
Yeah.
boyfriend. I mean, just the whole 9
Right.
yards.
Oh,
Like
yeah, that other part.
Again, it's total corruption and maddening. Maddening.
Hey, Mark,
Yeah.
real quick,
Okay. Yeah.
one other story. We don't have time to get into it, but I just think it's worth noting. TikTok, the Supreme Court is taking up the TikTok case days before it's supposed to be banned on January 19th.
Yeah. That's a big deal.
And I think that we, put a pin in that for now, but I just think it's a big deal.
It is. I've gotten a number of messages and I see some things on X, and for all I know, they're in the chat too, but I never read the chat, suggesting that we're kind of out of touch here, or maybe I'm out of touch for not recognizing the sentiment expressed by Vivek Ramaswamy in a post this morning, where he tweeted, "Critics say Doge isn't an actual, quote, department. They're right. It's a new way of doing government itself." Just to be clear, I'm just speaking for myself. I'm all for a new way. I'm all for changing the things in Washington that don't work, that aren't responsive to the will of the people. But the reality is, some of the political physics rules, laws cannot be repealed. And there needs to be government funding, and there needs to be, the debt ceiling needs to be raised or eliminated, and there needs to be a Speaker of the House. So it's all great for Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk to blow up Speaker Johnson's plan, but then they need to be productive and say, what's the next step? And right now, I don't see them proposing a next step that's actually something that can garner 218 votes. Doge cannot eliminate the requirement that there be 218 votes to pass something. It just can't. So I'm all for change. I'm not against them, and I'm not saying the status quo should be maintained, but they has to be realistic. I compare it to Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi's goal was to beat Donald Trump, and her view was Joe Biden couldn't do it. Her view also was that Kamala Harris couldn't do it. She had a plan to get rid of Joe Biden, which she executed. She did not have a plan to stop Kamala Harris. Elon Musk had a plan. Let's blow up Speaker Johnson's proposal to get a CR done that had some other things in it. I don't see another plan right now, but they're working on it. Tonight on Two-Way Tonight, which is, remember, the final episode of Two-Way Tonight for all of 2024, because we're dark the rest of the year starting tomorrow. But tonight, great episode. We'll talk about all the latest in developments in the CR and everything else we've been talking about here today. But we'll also have some folks from the Manhattan Institute, one of the great organizations here on this tiny little island. We'll talk about cities, and we'll talk about change and reform. Don't want to miss it. So join us tonight at 6 o'clock. And then we'll be back for the final episode of this program tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern time. And although I often kid and say we have surprises, we do have at least one surprise tomorrow, which I'm looking forward to.
I'm ready to go.
So enjoy your day. I'll see you at 6 o'clock tonight with all the latest, and then we'll be back for our final program of 2024 tomorrow at 9 a.m. Gentlemen, enjoy the day. Don't go too far from your phones. We may need to do a special report at some point.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. All right.
I have yoga at
yeah, you have yoga, and I got a bunch of meetings. I'm about to go for a run. So let's
how many
hope Speaker
lunches
Johnson
today, Mark?
respects our schedule. Zero lunches today, but I got a lot of meetings. All right, everybody, have a good day. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Good day.